Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 129. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 2nd of September in the year of our Lord 2022. Thank you for being here. If you're streaming this live, I think we have a little problem on the connection over on TikTok there. But if you're streaming this live over on TikTok or you are over on Instagram, be sure to hit that like button. Double tap the screen however you do it. If you're on YouTube also, I notice, when I look at the YouTube views, there are quite a few people who do view the live stream afterwards. You can click the like button too. So if you are viewing this live stream at some other point, do hit that like button too. It helps. Yeah. Good. I'm back over there on TikTok. It seemed like I fell off a little bit. All right. And as I don't always mention this, but I would like to remind you also the merchandise is for sale if you are interested in any of the Mindful t-shirts, the Mindful caps, the Mindful hats, etc., etc. You just hit me up in my inbox and you order whichever color, etc. you want. Also, the charts behind me, SM and Associates, Study Monkey, study with 2 E's over there on Facebook if you are so interested in getting some nice locally made charts. Well, SM and SM Resources over there on TikTok, or S Study Monkey over on Facebook. All right. Tonight we're talking crime. The very unfortunate reality of crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. Okay, Steve. I'm not sure who you are. We're talking about crime, and when you look at the when you look at what is going on around the music industry in Trinidad and Tobago, you look today, Trinidad artist was, well, an attempt was made on his life. Just, was it a week ago, another artist was killed. It's like every month a couple of them are either being killed or at least an attempt is being made on their life. Being a Trinidad dancehall artist seems to be like one of the most dangerous professions in Trinidad and Tobago. That's kind of scary. And I cannot help, and I think I spoke about this briefly before, but I cannot help but make that association between the way our our music industry, this Trinidad music industry, is heading, that direction, and the direction that Chicago drill music. I don't know how many of you are familiar with rap styles and different genres or subgenres of rap, but drill rap music, that for the most part was popularized in the United Kingdom. When it came over to the United States, a lot of it was used in their more gangster rapping style. And the modern gangster rappers, not like 90s gangster, modern gangsters. And in the 2010s to 2020s, that little period there, and even into the 2020s, if you look at the music scene in Chicago, one of the cities once called Chirac for, I believe, having more killings in Chicago than they had in Iraq at the height of their war. So yeah, people were dying there very regularly. And if you go through the history of the music scene in Chicago at that point in time, you'd see a lot of parallels with what is going on right now in Trinidad and Tobago. Much of the artists back then came out of that gang scene, and because of that, they spoke about that. That's where their music was headed. That's the direction their music was headed. That's what they sang about. And from singing about it, they both popularized the genre, they popularized the lifestyle, they popularized themselves, and they put targets on their own backs. So many of these artists would openly rap their specific gangs, and it was widely known these guys were members of this gang, of that gang, of the other gang. And they would talk about literally the murders that they do. You could go through the song in some of them and look, oh, well, this is the murder that fit this occasion, and look at the news story about it. And that's what was going on. And eventually, when you look through it, probably if there were 50 of them that came up at that point in time, maybe 10 remain now or something like that. A lot of them were killed. A lot of even the most popular ones murdered, because that's the lifestyle that they were living. And I remember speaking about this before when the other a previous artist was shot, and the the reality you could wonder is it the music influencing the lifestyle? Like, these boys are getting themselves in trouble because of the kind of music they're singing, or is it that these boys are coming out of this kind of lifestyle in the first place? This is the life they were living, and the music was simply a means to an end. Hi, Hazel. The music was simply a means to an end. The music was an outlet, as it were, to speak about what they were doing in the first place, and maybe inadvertently putting a bigger target on their own back. I think the latter too interesting. I would think the latter too. All right, let's jump into the article today, these articles. And a very unfortunate thing in the first two stories here is that the girlfriend of these men, the females surrounding these men, were the ones killed in at least two of these incidents here. The woman was the one killed. And it tells you something about, the how often we hear about victim blaming and don't blame the victim, etc., etc., etc. But you must consider that you must figure ways to prevent yourself from being a victim. And removing yourself from more dangerous company is one way to do that. We had the lady from Curep who was murdered in Arima, was that last weekend before, who was murdered in Arima when she was with her Coast Guard companion. I don't even know where that story is now. I suppose those in the police service might have more knowledge on that. But according to her family, she wasn't directly in any kind of crime, but she was somewhere where somebody was willing to have her killed. Woman killed in gun attack at hotel in St. Anne's. A woman who was identified was declared dead on arrival at the Port of Spain General Hospital. She was 25 years old after she and a man were shot in the car park of the Bricks Hotel, St. Anne's. Police said at about 2:20 p.m. they received a report that a car had been shot at and two people injured. Police and emergency health services responded and took the two to the hospital. Now, part of what reminds me even more of that whole Chicago drill scene is some of the murders ended up being like this. As things accelerated back then, there was one artist, FBG Duck. Now, I know some of you are not too much into rap, so you may not have any idea of these people. But he was murdered on basically the uptown side of Chicago, and that's not generally where the killings used to happen. The killings would happen in the more slum areas of Southside Chicago, but he was in the uptown area, where the upper scale stores are, and a hit was done there. Multiple gunmen came out and shot him in the broad daylight. And this is the direction these things go as they accelerate, because more and more these men would want to get back at each other, and more these men would want to be in more exclusive areas. So it's kind of a combination that leads in this direction. Gosh boy, that is so sad. Did you see her pic? Such a beautiful young woman. Yes, I saw it. Everything, so much about that is so sad. It's her birthday or the day after her birthday. She was a good performing student in the ACCA exams. I believe she was the top in the Caribbean or something like that, to that effect. Yeah, it is sad. It is sad. The man who was identified as a local dancehall artist survived the attack. Police said the silver gray Toyota Corolla that the two were in was riddled with bullets on the driver's window and rear window. Spent shells used in high-powered rifles were found at the scene. Newsday visited the scene and counted at least 11 bullet holes in both windows. The Express has it that he is in a stable condition right now. The Express was told that he was a member of the dancehall group ABG. Dancehall group is a vague way to put it. Police suspect that James, the guy, may have posted their whereabouts on Instagram, which led to the ambush. And that's something I read too. Someone in one of the comments was saying, and you know, he had just posted up, he and his girlfriend, and I'm thinking in my mind, well, yeah, that might be the problem. But even as I said, the parallels for me, someone as I regularly say, I take in probably too much random information at times. But I was fascinated for some reason. I was fascinated by the Chicago drill rap scene, and I took in so much of the information surrounding that. And this was part of the reality in this, because so many of these men follow each other on social media. These guys would be talking to each other, throwing talk for each other on social media. They're following each other. They know who each other are. So when you are wanted from one side to the next and your location is known, well, Steve Sukram says the government of Trinidad and Tobago is not doing anything for the people of, like, please, all right, never mind. 14 Carat says, little late, but I on the inside. Yo, blessed night to you, sir. Blessed night, blessed night. But yeah, that is the reality. And the thing is, the man who seemed to have been the target, he was shot in both legs and survived. Now, I am not angry the man survived. I'm glad the man survived, but the reality is I would not believe that the girl was their primary target. Yet still. And that wasn't the only one. From just 2 days ago, girlfriend killed as brothers targeted by gunmen. The mother of 2 men targeted by gunmen grieved at her Lacano Road, Lower Santa Cruz home for a woman who was shot and killed in the crossfire after gunmen stormed her son's home on Wednesday morning. Police said the woman was at home with her boyfriend at around 7 a.m. when she heard noises outside and went to check. Gunmen shot her multiple times before going to look for Joseph. He escaped with 1 gunshot wound to his right leg. Shot in his leg again. Shot in his leg again while the lady was murdered. She was pronounced dead on the scene and the injured man was taken to the hospital. On Tuesday, the man's brother was killed by gunmen as he walked near Cakesland Lacano Road around 2:15 p.m. He was shot several times. When Newsday visited, the man's mother sat on concrete steps of her porch holding her head as she was consoled by 2 relatives. She could not think of a reason why anyone would target her sons. Now, the Express has a bit of additional information on that whole thing. And the position the young lady was found in, they really wanted to kill the young lady. Let me see. The Express has something interesting on what the police found at the scene. Officers, here's this. In the meantime, someone called the police. After the shooting occurred out there in Santa Cruz. Officers also found an array of live assault rifle ammunition, magazines, a walkie-talkie, a rifle scope, plus 4 bags and a bucket of marijuana. Now, I don't suppose that the hitmen came out there with bags and buckets of marijuana. The mother said, though, she has no idea why anyone would have any problem with her sons, and I would take her word for it. But it's also interesting to note what the police also found on the scene. Just by the way, that's also what they found on the scene. Police said they took the man to the hospital. Police said they were told Morris was not originally from Santa Cruz but moved into the area 3 months ago. Police said the man had been liming with a few friends, etc., etc., etc. They added that both men, the man who was shot and his brother, who was shot the day before, were known to them, according to the police. According to the police. The police say the men were known to them, but the police say that very often. The mother maintains she doesn't know why her sons were targeted. And whose word are we going to take for that? But it's just interesting what the police found additionally at the scene. It's also interesting to note that in those two cases, the men who seem to have been the intended targets were not the ones who ultimately lost their life. Not saying that I wanted them to lose their life. Great that they didn't die, but the women that were with them did die. Sis was with the guy. It seems like the men were on a death path with the guy. They heard a noise outside and she went to check. The gang violence in Trinidad is the thing that seems to be pushing much of this. It's gang violence, and gang violence is a difficult thing to really tackle. The gang violence is what is linked to the whole TRINIBAD and the dancehall business and all of that. It's the gang. And similarly, as I keep linking it over to the Chicago drill scene, it was the gang violence. They weren't involved generally in just individuals doing random things. They were gangs. It was gangs. And over in the United States, something that they are trying to do with that now is a lot of those artists now are being held on RICO cases, racketeering. All the words aren't coming to mind, but it's basically racketeering and that kind of mobster organized crime charge. And they're being held, and some of the evidence being used are some of the lyrics in their songs. And to be honest, it seems like some of them might survive longer if they are held in jail versus being out there on the roads, out on the streets. Because when you mix sometimes the money that comes in from being a prominent artist and you mix that with an already difficult, violent life, you could get much more explosive results. Much more explosive results. Many of the time, like you look at some of these artists, and I'm not necessarily talking local, I'm talking that drill scene over in the United States. You watch at some of these artists, and their pendant, the pendant on their chain is the name of their gang, the name of a gang they represent. Like, how much bolder would you get than that? A multi-$100,000 piece of jewelry that is a gang sign. How do you solve something like that? I maintain, I don't think the solution in things like that is banning the music or anything like that. I don't think something like that would work, because I believe these men were already there before the music began. The strange thing is that's kind of what makes the music more appealing. It's the art, as it were, in the music. The fact that these men are speaking about something that they really experienced. In fact, some people who sing about it and have not really experienced it, their music could be, someone could clown them over that because you aren't really about this. The authenticity is the art. And I saw a tweet earlier today. Someone said, you know what? We could rack it up there. We have enough dance. We have enough TRINIBAD music already. We would play over the ones that we have. Nobody need to sing anymore. And you could understand that kind of idea. You could understand that kind of idea. Yeah, you're singing your reality, but your reality is a very dangerous one. And publicizing it seems like it's only making it more dangerous. The culture that has created TRINIBAD fuels the violence. TRINIBAD is the exhaust. Ooh, nice line, Curvon. Nice line. TRINIBAD is just the exhaust. The culture behind it is the fuel. I agree. I fully agree. Huh. That's a kind of cynical comment there. Trinidad memes, that's a kind of cynical comment. Funny, but kind of cynical because the guy's girlfriend did die. Racketeering influence corrupt organization. Thank you. I was not going to remember that on the fly. But talking about racketeering influenced corrupt organizations, Marlene McDonald case has gone straight to the High Court. Now, I don't know how many of you can remember Miss McDonald, but she's back in the news. She's back in the news. Her case is to be sent directly to the High Court. DPP sends Marlene McDonald's case straight to the High Court, but it's also true. Yeah, sorry for her. Yep, Marlene. An indictment has been filed against ex-government Minister Marlene McDonald on 6 counts of money laundering. Conspiracy to defraud and misbehavior in public office. Now, good night, Minister. Good night. Now, the thing is, when I read these days, when I read money laundering, I actually look at it with a squint these days of late. Because as I've read more, you recognize that money laundering could be a pretty wide range of crimes in Trinidad. So, for example, the DSS guy, the Special Susu, he had some money laundering charges leveled against him that had nothing really to do with DSS. It had to do with lending money without a lender's license and collecting back, etc., 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 etc. So sometimes money laundering is just a wide term for financial crimes, and sometimes it's just the police. The police know that, when you read the money laundering law in Trinidad and Tobago, really and truly, probably upwards of 3/4 of Trinidad could get charged with money laundering on a given day. Just by the way, there's a solution, but it's too ugly for us to face. Fatherless homes are to blame. Correct. I agree. Fatherless homes are to blame. For the most part, that's a lot of it. Fathers in the homes would have solved a lot of this. How do you do that? Western Union and the entire banking money transfer industry is money laundering 14 karat says. That's according to you, but I wouldn't, in certain lights, I wouldn't say that you are wrong necessarily. All right, Director of Public Prosecution Roger Gaspard SC filed it on August 29th in the High Court. Also named in the indictment were McDonald's longtime companion, Michael Carew, and 3 others, Edgar Zephyrin, Victor Mukecrane, and Wayne Anthony. In all, the 5 faced 15 counts. In filing the indictment, Gaspard said it was his considered opinion that the offenses, which allege dealings with criminal property over the sum of $1 million and various frauds being perpetrated against the state, involved serious and or complex fraud. In 2019, for a brief overview on what it was going on. Yeah, I saw that, Kevin. I saw that too. In 2019, when these charges were laid, the 5 faced a total of 49 charges of attempting to defraud the government by allegedly procuring funds for Carew's Calabar Foundation under the guise that it was a charity. Kevin, even in that case, the charges laid against them was money laundering. I found something kind of... I want to see as that goes on, what's the more details in that, because wouldn't that be theft or fraud? Money laundering? I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Could only pray that it don't have as much killing early next year so I can enjoy Carnival. Good luck with that. But yes, one of the techniques they were using, they may have learned this from the former American what they call that, Well, she was the first lady, but Secretary of State, right? That's what she went on to. And the Clinton Foundation, it seemed like they were trying a bit of foundation business. It seems like they were trying a bit of foundation business out there, because they were allegedly trying to procure funds for a foundation under the guise that it was a charity. The discontinued misbehavior charge against McDonald was in relation to another charge. That's one charge that was discontinued. The other charges against her and the others allege that they conspired to defraud the state of funds available to the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and Gender Affairs to allocate grants to two foundations, Provident Foundation and Calabar Foundation, by falsely representing they were genuine organizations and allegedly approving grants to be used for education skills enhancement and business development programs in poor communities. So, they were literally trying, allegedly, to steal money from the poorest of communities. They had these two organizations. They were applying for grants that were to be given to these communities, and the two organizations apparently were not authentic. The specific charges against McDonald allege she misrepresented that she had no connection to either foundation. She tried to make it seem like she knew nothing about these foundations. And you know, this is kind of my problem with a lot of the government help in the first place. Because when you look at so much government help, this is actually the reality of it. This is actually the reality of it. I regularly say this. Look at the URP budget, look at the CPEP budget, and break down the daily pay of the general URP workers and the general CPEP workers. And then work the math in there, and you would recognize that a lot of money isn't reaching down to that level. So often, because of this, sometimes I get a really cynical view. I could get a really cynical view. So often we see that when the state proposes some kind of help to help a specific community, my mind automatically goes to who is actually going to benefit from this. Like, all right, the state says that they're going to create a new foundation to help everyone who got their legs amputated, let's just see. And the first thing my mind runs to is, who is going to get the advertising contract? Who is going to get the marketing contract? Who is going to be the digital designer for the ads? You look at some of the contracts surrounding a lot of these foundations and you recognize, wait, the money isn't going in the direction that you think it's going in. If she deals with a large volume of people, it may get past her. But the problem is, it was not in her line ministry. So she may have been sending these up as being an MP for Port of Spain South. She may have been offering these names as suggestions, but it wasn't even in the ministry that she was working in. So I don't think it was a matter of her not knowing. I don't think it's a matter of her not knowing. And 15 cents on the dollar reach the people. I forgot the website that has it. There's a website that breaks down nearly all of those charitable organizations and how much money that you donate actually gets to the working end of the charity. And you will be surprised. Some of them are in single digits of cents. You donate $1 and maybe 1 cent reaches to the destination that you really want it to reach to. It's really unfortunate. And that is a large part of the reason that I am against government help. That's a large part of the reason. It's not that I don't want to help people. I don't want to see the government help people or anything like that. It's that so regularly, good night, Richard Glubman, so regularly when you see the government say that, yeah, we're going to help people. And you see the extras in that, the fine print in that, it makes you wonder. There's a kind of example of government help here and something being shut down. The homeless center is being closed. Homeless back on the streets as center for displaced closes. After 31 years of providing accommodation mainly for street dwellers in Port of Spain and its environs, the Center for Socially Displaced Persons yesterday closed its doors and landed 34 of these homeless individuals who refused alternative accommodation back on the streets. Now, homelessness is one, to me, where you see the complexity of how to fix these situations being shown so clearly. The complexity is shown so clearly because homelessness in the first place, as if you listen to some people who speak about the history of these things and the politics of these things, you'd recognize in the first place the word homeless was kind of a political term. Now, if you look in more progressive places, more progressive publications, they don't even use homeless anymore. They use the unhoused. These people aren't homeless, they are unhoused. And the reality is, homeless is kind of a misnomer for what the entirety of this thing is. It's not that it is one kind of person that ends up here. Some of them may be drug addicts, some may be mentally ill, some may be legitimately facing hard times at home, some may just be runaways that like the freedom of it all, some may be hustlers that want to be out there like a free bird. There are different types of people out there. Combining them all together and trying to treat them all as the same thing isn't a good idea. And it's another one of those things that lots of governments just throw money into. If you look at the state of California right now in the United States, they have homeless people all over on their streets. And on every street, it's littered with homeless people. And if you look at the budget to help these homeless people, that budget is ever increasing. But they keep doing measures to help the homeless people right there, you know, in their position. Not understanding that that's what keeps them there for the most part too. This cadre of homeless people who opted not to be institutionalized will now rejoin those already socially displaced individuals who have been forced to eke out a living on the streets of the capital city. Now, bear in mind, as it's saying already, the people that are going to be placed back on the street from the center aren't just going to be kicked out there on the street. They aren't going to just be kicked out there on the street. They are choosing that. There are other institutions they can go to, but they are choosing they would prefer not. In the last SVP came under the radar in a 136 Joint Select Committee 2022 report on human rights, equality, and diversity chaired by Nyan Gadsby, which found that the organization had been compliant with the provision of accurate and timely reports to the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, which paid a subvention of $2.8 million annually for care for the homeless. The report also revealed a lack of financial accountability and systemic deficiencies. St. Vincent de Paul Society, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, was the group running that center. And after an audit was done, they found lacking. They were found lacking. Same thing again. Millions of dollars spent there, millions of dollars thrown at trying to help the displaced members of our society. And what's the solution we get for it? What's the end of it? In the last 3 decades, the government has forked out $50 million to the St. Vincent de Paul Society for the care of street dwellers in the capital. Many of the street dwellers are drug addicts, unemployed, HIV positive, mentally unstable, and have family issues, as you may expect many of them to be. What have we gotten for those millions of dollars? Now, I wouldn't doubt that the society would say that they are doing their job as best as they can, but as a country, we're wondering, is it really? What was the long-term goal here? And by the way, this initial center was set up as a temporary center. The initial plan was this was supposed to be a temporary center. In July, 80 residents of the center were informed by the ministry of the center's August 30th closure. The ministry noted that the facility was a temporary measure and was not purpose-built, but rather retrofitted to provide a basic level of care. Now, one of the reasons, a big part of the reason that many of the displaced persons inside of this center like that center is that center was basically like a hotel, a free hotel, where they may get meals. They could go as they want, come as they please, and they could live that free life. And part of the reality is many people are on the road because they want that kind of free life. They don't want anyone dictating their pace. And the sad reality, like some people who like to talk about freedom and don't let anyone tell you what to do and you be your own person, and okay, I understand the context you might be talking in, but in reality, society always dictates our pace. If you're living in a society, you're molded by the norms of the society. That's why you are in that society. Many of them do not want that. They do not want the chains and bounds of society to be on them. And that's why they would rather live like that. So many of those street dwellers, some people wouldn't know unless you have a family member like that. Because bear in mind, many of those street dwellers have family members. Now, I think street dwellers is a much more accurate term. It's a pretty descriptive term that you understand the picture. Many of these street dwellers have family members who may very well care about them, family members who may send them to mental hospitals. But you have to realize that a lot of them are grown adults with their own agency, and they choose where they want to go and what they want to do. And that's what they want to do. How do you solve something like that? Do you just continue providing a space for them to live freely while they still parade the city and act as street dwellers? Like, what's the solution there? The residents were offered 4 alternative accommodations. 4 alternative accommodations. A community care program, training opportunities, rehabilitation, and rental assistance. Like, Trinidad is such, in certain aspects, Trinidad is such a sweet place. You have no idea. You have no idea. There are many countries that don't even have an old age pension. Many people believe that we as a society are responsible to catch those that fall through the cracks. And I understand and agree if the society is capable of that. But the reality is many societies are just not capable of doing that, you know. And Trinidad has probably too many of those. It has so many of those that some people, like the former MP, allegedly are using some of these to just pilfer money because there are just so many of these. They're offering these street dwellers 4 different options. You have options here, sir. As somebody who may in nearly any other light be seen as the lowest person in society. In Trinidad society, you have 4 options, all of which are completely paid for. A community care program, training opportunities, rehabilitation, and rental assistance. Now, part of the thing with these 4 opportunities being offered is that almost surely these 4 opportunities would come with conditions. It would come with some restraints. It would come with some, you have to be here, you have to be there, you can't do this, you could do that, etc., etc., etc. So it is understandable why still a significant number of them turn down all 4 opportunities. Kervon says it's not okay to be lying down on the pavement and passing excrement in the city. I agree. You see, the problem of street dwellers is one, like we were talking last night. I don't know how many of you were in the live last night, but last night we were talking about anthropocentrism and entertainment. To deal with the fireworks for Independence Day and how we look at it. And if you look at it in a caring manner, you could look and see and find that, hey, that's really brutal and uncaring for us to be out here bursting fireworks knowing that it's going to harm the animals, and for what? For just someone's entertainment. But in thinking it through, you may understand that in the long run, weighing it out, we do all kinds of different things to harm animals either way. So it's not one, having one view doesn't necessarily make you more of a caring person than the other way. There are ways you could reason it out that make you wonder, something is strange there. And I think homelessness is something very similar to that, where you could look at it with a bleeding heart and think this is a human being. And some homeless people could put on the act, or sometimes it's not even an act. They are really broken. They are really broken people. They're in a terrible place in their life. They are humiliated. They aren't happy, they are tormented, they are tortured, sometimes by mental problems, sometimes by drug addiction, and you try to drag this person away, and the optics of that, where you see this person crying, they're at the bottom of human desolation, and they're crying with someone trying to drag them away, and they're like, where you gonna carry? You can imagine the scene, where you gonna carry him, and they pull out the cameras. That's a human being. How are you doing that to a human being? And bear in mind, if this is a grown adult who wants to be on the road, the only way you could stop them from being there is if you hold them against their will. So you are going to take someone and imprison them for what? In a free country, you aren't supposed to be able to imprison someone without them committing a crime. So how do you remove them? And okay, loitering is a crime, but loitering doesn't, I don't believe loitering has a prison sentence to it. And if you give them a fine and then you charge them for not paying the fine, then you're saying, well, actually you're locking them up for being on the street. And would we agree with that? In economic terms, consumption is difficult to reverse. If you make it too easy, then why leave? I think the solution is to not allow it in the first place. That's the solution. And I think, as callous as it might sound, if it's not allowed, the motivating factors that would allow some people to go into that place would not be there. Some people may be willing to struggle on the end of a job if they know that going out on the street is not an option. While some people, if they know just going out on the street and beg and live in squalor is an option, they will do it. So I think, yes, interesting. I do think a human touch is necessary on dealing with the personal and individual lives of them. But I also think a kind of zero tolerance approach is necessary too. Without the zero tolerance approach, it's nearly impossible to curb that kind of thing. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. Glorious mustache man. Why? Thank you, sir. Thank you. On Tuesday, of the 56 residents living in the center, only 40 were served letters by the ministry informing them that they have refused alternative accommodations. The other 16 could not be found, a source at the center said. So some of them already disappeared before the ministry could even serve them the letters. They're unhappy with the alternatives. Many of the socially displaced residents who had to vacate the facility by 11 a.m. yesterday admitted that they declined the ministry's alternative care because they wanted their freedom of movement. Simple like that. I don't think any self-respecting human chooses to do this if they could do better for themselves. I understand what you're saying, I hear what you're saying, but I don't fully agree. That kind of reasoning gets people into really weird places. Any self-respecting human chooses to do this. So it kind of puts everyone as a victim of circumstance, which is not totally true. Some people choose to do that by making other choices. You see, there are first, second, third order choices and reactions and decisions. So, all right, if one of the easiest examples, if you have a baby, you don't have a baby by choosing to have a baby. You have a baby by choosing to do a certain human act. And the baby is the consequence of that action. So yeah, many people may not choose a certain thing. Many people may not choose a certain thing, but by the decisions they made, they are choosing it. And if we allow those decisions to continue unabated, people will make that decision more and more. So here's an example. It could be a controversial example for some, but it's a nice modern social example. No-fault divorce, that has been widely more accepted now. That wasn't a common thing, at least not in the Western world. If you were married, it was expected you were staying with that person for life. And the no-fault divorce combined with sexual liberation of women, freedom, has caused now much more children growing up in broken homes. And the negative societal ramifications of what happens to children growing up in broken homes. We're seeing that so many children are growing up in broken homes, much more now than before. Part of the reason for that is the popularization of no-fault divorce and sexual liberation. It's not that people or the society chose to grow up children fatherless. It's that we made certain tweaks on society that caused certain probably unforeseen results. So yeah, they may not have chosen that directly, but some do choose by their action. We cannot do one size fits all. That is correct. I agree, we cannot do one size fits all. But bear in mind, interesting, the government offered 4 options. You allow live debates? Yes, I do, functionalist. The government had 4 options available. It was not one size fits all. The 4 options the government gave, let's see if we can pull that back up. The 4 options, they could have gone either to a community care program, training opportunities, rehabilitation, and rental assistance. 4 different alternatives. They turned down all. They wanted their freedom. And what are you going to do about that? How are you going to solve that? If someone does not want to go where you want them to go, they want to stay on the street. They like the vibes there. A homeless woman claimed that a female friend who accepted accommodation elsewhere alleged being prevented from seeing her boyfriend at the new location. That's one of the reasons there. The lady is saying that she knows of one lady that went into one of those institutions and now she cannot see her boyfriend. Human enough reason. Street dwellers have boyfriends too. All right. I just think homelessness is one of those problems that I don't know if I would use the word impossible, but it's very difficult. Very difficult. They aren't all one. They aren't all one. What you may need to do with the drug addicts, you won't do that with the mentally ill. You won't do that with the people whose houses burnt down and they had nowhere else to go. You won't do that with the runaway children. They are just different avenues that you need to pursue. Now, the benefit I think with a country like Trinidad and Tobago is we're small enough that I think we should be able to properly handle this, to properly handle our own homeless people. I think that shouldn't be something out of the range of possibility for a country our size. But to handle the homeless, the socially displaced, the street dwellers, it would take decisions that some people would have to do that they would be willing to be called mean words for, because that's just the reality. Not all of them are going to just want to do it. I was watching this ridiculous program where some really, those very far thinking, progressive thinking, futuristic thinking people, they want no jails and true prison reform when no one goes to jail. And the idea is that if everyone has the perfect life, then everyone would be perfect. So if someone is committing crime, then what we need to do is not jail them, but figure out where in their life there's lack and give them that. Now, the reality is we don't have enough resources to give everyone that. Also, these people are generally communists, and that's what they're aiming for. And then, even beside all of that, the human reality is that's not how humans function. We don't necessarily know the exact reason everyone does what everyone does. It's kinda hubristic, it's kind of narcissistic. You're thinking of yourself very highly to assume that you could figure out what everyone wants enough to make everyone behave perfectly. That's just not how people work. It's just not how people work. So for something like homelessness, almost surely you're going to have to deal with some people forcefully in order to stop it. That's just the reality. You are going to have to deal with some people forcefully. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Any comments or questions? I see someone spoke something about debate or something to that effect. The city and municipal corporation managers should be responsible for removing them. I actually agree with that, Curvon. I think the handling of street dwellers should be a more loose thing. That would make much more sense, because street dwellers, oftentimes, the locals in the vicinity, the locals in the community have a much better idea of what the problems might be that they're facing. Some of them, they would know that this guy has a home, he lives in a couple streets down the road, don't study him, send him home. He is loitering, send him home. Or they might know, hey, this is a new child on the street. Where did this child come from? He wasn't here last week. Something is serious. So yeah, handling these things locally, I think, would be a big part of that. That's why how many times would I say it? Local government. I am for local government. I am for putting much more power in the local government. All the way. All the way. I hope, I would like, if, as I regularly say, if there was the Shogunas House of Assembly, the San Fernando House of Assembly, just how Tobago has it, they get their little budget there and they're in charge of that. I wouldn't mind that at all. And I think we would get people much more serious in politics, serious in taking politics seriously in our country if we have things like that, because local government is something that it's much more reachable. You could feel like you could actually do something and exercise some change in situations surrounding you as pertaining to politics. That's something you could get out of local government pretty easily. So yeah, I'm all for local in that case. Yeah, by all means. Let the homeless problems be handled by local government. Street children is one issue I think the state must be responsible for. Well, the state in general, but I also think that could be something spearheaded by local government authorities. I believe that. But yes, of course, part of society's job, I believe, is to take care of displaced children, because there's no one else to do it. It's like, who else are you expecting to do it? Of course, the society and the state have to take care of them, because there's literally no one else, and they need someone to do it. So yes, I agree with that. Okay, Any comments or questions? Any further comments or questions? Where's the guy that wanted to debate or something to that effect? What did you want to discuss? Or is he already gone? In that case, I will see you on Monday. Yeah, it seems like I will see you guys Monday. I hope you are educated, informed, or entertained. This was the Mindful Live. I'll see you guys for the next Mindful Live, Monday night, 9 o'clock or 9:15, one out of the two, 9 or 9:15, according to how the time swings occasionally. So I will see you then, guys. Hope you have a good weekend. Be safe out there because, yeah, things drastic. Peace out. Peace and all that goodness.